Homeless woman helps disabled boy without realizing who is watching. Have you ever noticed how life often sets up unlikely encounters that have the power to change entire destinies? This story begins on a rainy afternoon when a young boy in a wheelchair was struggling to cross a busy street. No one stopped, no one paid attention, until a woman, marked by abandonment and the loneliness of living on the streets, decided to act. What seemed like nothing more than a simple act of kindness was, in reality, the beginning of something much bigger. Dona Zefasamion, invisible to most, saw in that boy what others refused to see as dignity, and his silent plea for help. What she didn't know was that, on that very corner, a pair of watchful eyes was observing everything, and those eyes had the power to change lives. Get ready, because what looked like just a small encounter in the rain would soon become the starting point of a journey of transformation, respect, and human connection. A story that reminds us true wealth is not found in our pockets, but in our hearts. It was late afternoon, and the rain showed no sign of stopping. People rushed with umbrellas, dodging puddles, focused only on themselves. In the middle of the street, Lucas, a boy in a wheelchair, was trying to cross alone. The world around him seemed deaf to his struggle. That's when Dona Zifa, a woman used to being socially invisible, stopped and noticed what no one else dared to see. She dropped the worn-out bag she was carrying, ignored the cold rain running down her face, and ran to push the wheelchair. A simple gesture, yet filled with generosity and compassion. Those who have had empty hands often know this truth. Sometimes the ones who have the least are the ones who give the most. Meanwhile, Ricardo, a businessman used to solving everything with money, watched from across the street, curious, almost unsettled. The scene looked like something out of a movie, the loneliness of two forgotten souls colliding with the indifferent rush of the crowd. Lucas, his eyes glistening with tears, looked at the stranger as if he had finally found someone who truly saw him. Dona Zifa, despite the abandonment and solitude that defined her life, acted with dignity and respect, never expecting anything in return. Ricardo, still standing still, began to wonder if he was the one who was truly invisible in that rain. While many looked away, Dona Zifa proved once again that generosity isn't about what you carry in your wallet, it's about what you carry in your heart. Soaked, exhausted, with no guarantee of where she'd sleep that night, she still stood firmly by Lucas' side. In every gesture, there was genuine Campasiona's silent message that didn't need words: you're not alone. The contrast was striking. Around them, the rush of the city drowned out sensitivity. People walked by close enough to reach out, yet chose to keep moving. Ricardo, watching, began to feel uncomfortable. With all his wealth and comfort, he realized he had never had the courage to act as that homeless woman had. Dona Zifa's kindness highlighted his own indifference. Life has a curious way of teaching us through unexpected examples. Sometimes a single action shows us more than years of speeches or books ever could. Ricardo, used a measuring worth in numbers, started reflecting on dignity and respect. Why was someone with so little capable of giving so much? That question echoed inside him, and he knew that encounter had much more to teach him. Lucas, though still a child, already knew the pain of abandonment. His parents, unable to handle his disability, had walked away, leaving him to a routine of silence and loneliness. At school, he was remembered only when someone needed to check off a good deed. The wheelchair wasn't what weighed on him the most, it was a feeling of being unseen, and that invisible pain made him a mirror of so many forgotten children. Dona Zifa carried similar scars. Living on the streets meant being ignored every single day, as if she were part of the scenery. People didn't see her as a person, but as an inconvenience. Yet she preserved a rare dignity. She refused coins tossed carelessly at her feet, accepting only help that came with respect. That strength amid so much vulnerability was something few could ever understand. The meeting between Lucas and Dona Zifa brought together two stories that society had chosen not to hear. Different worlds, but bound by the same experience of social invisibility. Ricardo, witnessing this connection, felt touched in an unexpected way. For the first time in years, the loneliness he carried deep inside found a reflection in their eyes. Something in him began to shift, though he couldn't yet explain how. Ricardo had always had everything money could buy: imported cars, luxury vacations, a penthouse overlooking the city. But beneath it all, there was a void nothing could fill. Despite his success, loneliness sat with him at every glass of wine, every business meeting. Watching Dona Zifa and Lucas that rainy night, he felt something he hadn't in years, a call to look beyond himself. The scene struck him more deeply than any motivational speech or self-help book ever could. This wasn't theory, it was reality. How could someone living in abundance feel so poor in human connection? Ricardo realized he was trapped in the opposite kind of invisibility. He wasn't ignored, but he had disconnected from people almost completely. Material wealth had never brought him the generosity or compassion missing in his life. From that day forward, change began. Ricardo decided his money would no longer be a wall between him and others, but a bridge. He didn't want to give just for tax breaks or corporate marketing, wanted to act with authenticity, preserving the dignity of those who receive his help. It was the beginning of a redemption journey, where his greatest investment would be in people, not bank accounts. He knew that if he approached Zifa with direct handouts, he might hurt her dignity. She would never accept charity thrown at her. So he acted differently. First, he arranged for Lucas to receive a brand new wheelchair, leaving it as an anonymous gift with no notes, no speeches. He wanted the boy to feel cared for and not pitted. That difference was essential. With Dona Zifa, his approach was even more delicate. Instead of simply giving her money, he found a way to create opportunity. Through a friend, he secured her a modest job in a local cafe, where she could work with dignity and rebuild her self-esteem. Ricardo understood that true compassion doesn't humiliate, it empowers. And every step he took was rooted in respect. The most interesting part? Even while helping, he chose to remain in the background. No applause, no public recognition. His goal was to prove to himself that real generosity happens when no one is watching. Lucas began new treatments thanks to the physiotherapy Ricardo quietly financed. Dona Zifa rediscovered the dignity of being useful. Slowly, Ricardo realized this was the kind of wealth he had been searching for all along. Over time, Lucas and Dona Zifa built a friendship that reached far beyond that rainy day. It was beautiful to see how two lives marked by loneliness and neglect found in each other a place of belonging. In every conversation, Zifa shared life lessons no book could teach, while Lucas gave her something she hadn't felt in years, a sense of being important to someone. Ricardo, still helping from the shadows, watched closely. He came to see that the real transformation wasn't just in the material benefits he provided, but in the compassion that bonded the two together. That genuine connection reminded him that dignity and respect are the foundation of any healthy human relationship. And as he drew closer, he began to rediscover himself too. The businessman, once trapped in a cold routine of profits and meetings, started finding meaning in the simple act of being present. Compassion stopped being just a nice word for corporate speeches and became part of his daily life. He understood that generosity doesn't just transform the one who receives it, transforms the one who gives. In that unlikely triangle, a boy in a wheelchair, a homeless woman, and a wealthy businessman was living proof that human connection is a true engine of life. This story reminds us that small gestures of kindness and compassion can transform lives, and often they transform the giver as much as the receiver. So ask yourself, how many times have you walked away instead of reaching out because of fear, shame, or being in a hurry? And what if today you chose to act differently, even if it was just with a smile or a small act of kindness? Think about how dignity and respect could guide your actions. True help never humiliates, it strengthens. What opportunities could you create for someone without expecting anything in return? When you act with care and attention, you build human connections worth more than any material wealth. Now it's your turn. Look around. Notice who is invisible, silent, or alone. Turn your compassion into real action and feel the impact it is not only in someone else's life, but in your own. And to keep hearing inspiring stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Your next action could change someone's life and maybe even your own.